We have a small crew, a small crowd joining us, but so many folks like to watch these, maybe based on their schedule more so than our firm time here at 1 o'clock. But you guys get the benefit of asking some questions. So we're gonna record this. We'll post this on the website so people can watch it at their leisure. And we can kind of get started. If you haven't joined us before, my name is Sean King, and I've been working in the small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofit organizations for about 25 years. Currently the principal at Aspire Marketing Group, and we do a lot of consulting, professional development, capacity building for arts organizations, events groups. If you have sat in on my sessions before, you kind of know my game plan for webinars, training, and get a lot of clients and work done in the mentorship program, which is really a one-on-one ability. And we kind of have that today with our group of participants, almost a one-on-one situation here with you. So I've been working also as the advancement consultant for Cultural Coalition of Allentown, which is a brand new nonprofit 501c3 trying to bring the arts and economic development together here in my home area in Eastern Pennsylvania. I am a presenter for IFEA and also Michigan in Indiana events and festivals. Many of you might know me through the Arts Reach program, and also Pennsylvania Council on the Arts keeps me busy. One big project that I'm working on right now is as a member of the National Council for the 21st Century Arts Marketing and Audience Development for Americans for the Arts, and Pennsylvania Council on the Arts that kind of funds a lot of the work that we're doing to be able to research the idea of building marketing and audience development projects for the coming arts organizations, events, festivals, those people who, as you'll see as we go through our sponsorship today, there's so much potential for arts and festivals and events to come together as a convening place. And that's really where sponsors want to be and corporations want to be. So we're going to talk about that today. You can follow me along at my website, on my blog, and also at Twitter. So that being said, excuse my cough, our goals for today's webinar is to review the basics of sponsorship. I don't know how much activity you have in sponsorship, whether you're coming on board kind of new to it and thinking about how you can make your organization take advantage and leverage sponsorship as an income revenue stream. Or if you're an experienced pro and you're just looking to kind of connect the dots. We're looking at ways to explore sponsorship sales, how to do that, a little discussion on valuation. How much is your property worth? How much are those sponsorships worth? And a definition of activation. And as I said, we'll try some questions and answers maybe about midway through. We're just getting started now, so maybe in about 20 minutes or so, we'll take a quick break for questions from those who have joined us. So that being said, most people think of sponsorship as this, right? The minor league baseball stadium, which obviously is in some areas you can't drive too far without finding this kind of blatant exploitation of marketing and sponsorship and activation. And the interesting thing that I use this for is kind of a or a launching point is if you look at that that entire layout, you're going to see things that are obviously sponsors, which are dollars and cents. But a lot of those, think of the radio station, think of maybe Coke, think of the hotel logo, think of the News 2. Those are probably all trade. And those are the ways that sponsorship has manifested itself, not necessarily as cash out of pocket for the sponsor to the property. And in this case, you guys are the property. But how can you get things done without spending a whole lot of your own money and doing it in trade. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So that being said, why are we here? This is a statistic brought to us by IEG, which is basically the it's organization called International Events Group, and they're the clearinghouse for almost everything that goes on in sponsorship, everything from the Olympics and the NFL and NASCAR, down to what's happening in community events, festivals, arts organizations. And you'll see here what we're dealing with, what we're looking at is, the arts and the festivals and event projects and programs. And if you look at this as a grand scheme, it's somewhere in the mid 250 $250 billion that are spent in sponsorships each year. We're getting about 8% of that between the arts and festivals. So there's a big pile of money out there for us to work on. Again, this is not all cash. This is some in-kind and trade, but obviously we've got a long way to go to find our friends in sports, which take up about 70% of that sponsorship activation. And the interesting point that I want to put in your minds is, how can you look at what's happening with the sports teams in your area or even nationally and leverage some of the ideas that they have, just like those billboards that I showed you before. Let's learn from those who lead, and maybe take some of those ideas and transport them into the festivals and the arts situations that we're in. So that being said, let's start with the basics. What is the definition of sponsorship? And the definition of sponsorship is brands, businesses, and organizations aligning with similar audiences. Those similarities are in audience demographics, they're in geography. But basically, if you want to look at this, what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect your audience to the audience of that product or service that the corporation is trying to instill. It doesn't necessarily have to be a corporation, right? It can be other nonprofits. It can be health systems. It could be a lot of different, it could be the government. There are a lot of different ways to look at sponsorships, but it's about connecting. It's about the connection between your audience demographic and your geography and what that sponsor wants to, where and how that sponsor wants to share their message. Maturation of the industry has grown from, just those simple billboards and simple vinyl banners that we may have all dealt with in some way, shape, or form, and program ads in playbills, to being things that are much more ingrained and much more a part of the overall of the holistic approach, the holistic marketing approach of your arts organization, your event, your festival, your program. The key part that we need, and I'm going to keep coming back to this over the next couple of minutes, is we have to provide a remarkable point of differentiation as the property, as the platform by which these sponsors can get involved. So it's incumbent upon us to be as creative as possible, because not only are we making ourselves stand out, but at that same time, we're making our partners stand out. I'm a big advocate, a big proponent of things like exclusivity, so that you can work and put all of your efforts and your energies into that one sponsor, rather than into that one sponsor and their competitor and their competitor's competitor. A lot of arts organizations just kind of go for the money grab, but sometimes the best relationships, the most long-term relationships, are the ones that are built and developed over a period of time that ingrain the productivity, the ideas, the concepts, the branding of everything that's going on at the corporate or the property or at the sponsor level, and infuse that into everything that we do at the property level. So that being said, we go into the next slide. It's a two-way street. It's more than just cashing a check. There's a lot of people, if you're responsible for doing the sponsorships, getting out there on the street, making the cold calls, getting the appointment, doing the pitch, doing the follow-up to the follow-up, the follow-up to the follow-up to the follow-up, because we know these all take a lot of time. And then you get that check in hand. That's only the beginning, right? You've done your work, but you've got to be thinking about those activation opportunities. It's more than just providing just access. You can't say to a sponsor, hey, we're going to give you a table and we're going to give you a tent, and we're going to give you a sign, and we're going to give you an ad and a couple of promotional mentions, knock yourself out. You want to roll up your sleeves and be able to get involved and create meaningful relationships with those sponsors. So it really becomes a partnership and eventually becomes a relationship between you and the individuals at those companies. It's about sharing of resources. It could be that they're going to provide volunteers to you for whatever reason. Those are great ways for you to be able to express the relationships and the importance of the relationship between yourself and your organization and that sponsor beyond just the dollars and cents. It's better than just trading for access. The goal of all of this is that we have trusted, valued partners at the end of the day, that you're not necessarily worried whether they're going to renew or not, but it's going to be how can we deepen that relationship for the next time, the next year. So as we look at sponsorship as a continuum, in the sales world, we have three steps, and we're going to talk about these today. We're going to talk about prospecting, we're going to talk about pitching, and we're going to talk about closing. That's a lot of sales. A lot of people get uncomfortable because they're not really sales oriented. But what we're going to try to do here is give you some tips and hints on how that's going to make yourself a little bit more comfortable. Then there's activation. That's the day of, that's the week of, that's the couple of months leading up to. What are all the different key points that you can use the messaging and the branding and everything that's coming from your sponsor and put that as a part of what your overall marketing is going to be. And then lastly, review and renewal. I always say that we need to be thinking about renewal, and I think I even have a slide in here somewhere along the way that when you're sitting down and making that first agreement, in the back of your mind, put yourself forward a year, and you're trying to get that renewal, you're trying to get that signature again. What are the things that are going to get you there? And always be thinking about that. That's a chance for you to be even better and even stronger partner and grow that relationship. So, question on the sponsor side is, why do marketers sponsor arts and events? Number one, and this gets to quality of life. It gets to all of those things that when we're trying to define the role of arts and events. Yes, you can talk about the economic impact of, we sell X amount of tickets, we bring X amount of thousands of people to our community, but really it's culture that defines us. It's the social capital, it's the glue that keeps the communities together. Otherwise, we have cities are basically buildings, with a whole bunch of not connected people. Communities are neighborhoods without connections. It's important. It's actually one of the most important things that we're doing in the world in which we live, is to define the culture. So culture defines us as much as we define it. Arts, events, and festivals showcase communities. That's the one thing. If we can lift up our artists, if we can lift up our students, if we can lift up and show all the great things that are happening in the communities, those are great places for sponsors to want to be involved. It is the only opportunity where marketers can reach groups and people in a social setting. Let's think about it. And this is why sports gets as much money as it does, not only because of the telecast and the broadcast rights, but where else do 50,000 people come together anymore? It just doesn't happen, and especially when we start talking about the arts and events and festivals in our small little neighborhoods, in our communities, it's the only place. Everybody's like off into their own worlds. They're on screens. They're on their tablets at night. They're in their homes. They're doing whatever. Everything that social media has brought us has also separated us, because we're not having personal interaction and communication. Sure, we can FaceTime folks, but it's a lot different than sitting, pulling up a blanket next to another family from down the neighborhood and listening to a classical music concert or a jazz concert or a blues band. Those are really important things that what sponsors, the really smart ones, are doing, are finding their way inside those major events and being able to make realistic and human connections in ways that social media can only hope, and marketing and advertising can only hope to. The last part to sponsors is there could be challenges facing the company or organization. They could have gotten some bad press recently. They could have a launch. They could have a brand new product that they want to get their name associated with and their brand out. And that's where it's important when, let's say if you're in the artistic community, that you want to be able to go out and reach those sponsors that have the arts in their DNA, right? There are some of those. You can think of Highline luxury automobiles. You can think of top shelf top shelf vodkas. Start to think about those things that align with your current audience base, and that opens some of the doors that are going to allow you to make those realistic and those connections that are going to be around for a long time. So there's always a marketing and public relations side as well as a branding side to what we're doing on the sponsor side. On the property side, we talk about organizations to use funds to offset expenses, right? We've got logistics. We've got to rent stages. We've got to pay artists. We've got marketing costs. We've got overhead costs. All of those kind of things factor in, whether we're a festival running 3 days or 5 days, or we're an arts organization that's running an 8-month season. There are all of these pieces that need help, and there's only so much coming from philanthropy these days. We know that the federal and local governments aren't necessarily the greatest supporters of the arts. Some are, but some local communities are, but most aren't. So we've got to find new revenue sources, and sponsorship is a way for that. Sponsorship can also be a part of the programming. It can be one of those things, if you have the right sponsor at the right time, to fold them into what you're doing when you're putting your programming together, either again as a multi-day festival or as a multi-month arts organization. And then you also want to think about the sponsor in the guest's journey, right? The guest journey is everything from how your marketing reaches them to your interaction and interactivity on the website, to your social media, to when they walk into your event or festival, to how they experience what's going on, to when they leave. Those are all different touch points that we can use to be able to infuse the sponsor into that, which again creates that level of relationship that we're trying to build that makes that renewal almost a foregone conclusion in the future. So some more basics, different categories of sponsors. We've got trade. So for those beginners out there, dollar to dollar with media, right? You want to have some media sponsorship, whether it's a marketing company doing digital advertising for you, or whether it's some more of the traditional media. There are ways to do that. There are ways to trade for vendors, right? You need stages, you need printing, you need other kind of things happening. That's one way for you to just dollar for dollar it. In kind are those products or services in exchange for access. It's a little bit deeper level. And then finally, there's cash. And that's the financial contribution, right? We all like that. That's the check. We have a $50,000 sponsorship. Here it is. We have a $5,000 sponsorship. Here's your check. Let us know how that can all work. So again, if you're on the beginner side of things, philanthropic side of things are going to be separate monies from marketing. Some companies, insurance companies, you can almost, banks have different pools of money. So always think, if somebody asked me a question, at one of the workshops that we did regarding, I went to the bank and, they gave me a couple of dollars, but it was nowhere near what we were thinking. I said, we got talking about the specific bank. That bank has a wealth management portfolio that they're trying to build, so that the property went back to the bank and started to talk to another division, and they were able to bring out a little bit more money. So don't just think of the category as the category. There are different opportunities there. So when we're prospecting, you want to determine your potential partners, compile a list of marketers that currently are involved in sponsorship. There are a lot of businesses that don't get it. They don't understand. They don't know what you're talking about. If they're not active sponsors, you want to put those kind of on a cautionary list. You want to go after them. You want to make them You never know if a new marketing manager comes in, if a new CEO takes over, there are opportunities there. Compile that list of marketers who are active in sponsorship. Are they active in everything? Do they give money to every single event, charity, arts organization? If that's the case, you need to be in line there, right? You don't want to miss up. And then lastly, who do you have contacts with, and who do your board members have contacts with, and who do some of the people that work in your either volunteer or as part of your staff? Reach out to those folks to try and find trying to find the connections that are going to open the doors for you. What businesses have similar audiences? Again, I use the arts along with particular high-line luxury products. That's an opportunity that if you're thinking about a different way to reach an audience, they are looking to reach that same audience at the same time. Maybe you put those two things together. There's a difference between cold calls and warm leads, right? Cold calls are, I don't know anybody, I just Googled you and I'm calling you. And you don't know the person who picks up the phone, whether they're the marketing director, the CEO, or a temp, right? You just don't know who they are. You have to pay attention to them because they're always going to be part of the outreach. But you want to be focusing on those warm leads. You want to be focusing on those things that people who have provided in some kind of introduction. That's a really good place to start. Or if you can have somebody do the introduction for you, that's even better, because then you can walk in the door actually starting somewhere. Learn as much as you can about the prospect, and then go nuts with them. So we talked a little bit about potential categories. Here's a pretty exhaustive list, and when you look at the top end of banks and credit cards, like you're not going to call up Visa, but there's an opportunity for that credit card company to be in a relationship with a bank. So that's where you kind of want to make that connection. You're not going to call up Chevrolet, but you're probably going to call up the either the local Chevy dealer or the dealership group. I would always advocate for. There's a little more money there. There's a little more flexibility there, and you have an opportunity to again connect their potential customer and current customer base with your current customer base, your current audience. Those are really key. So. Again, everybody that's on this call, get a copy of this presentation so they can kind of go to work at all of this. So, selling sponsorships, there are different ways. Again, depending on what is in the best interest of your sponsor. Is it a business to business? Do they want to talk to business owners because they're really about high quality copiers and telecommunications and IT services, things that regular consumers would have no need for. Those are connector points. If you've got a good audience of business owners, that's who you want to make that connection for. Business to consumer, we're all in that business. So just think about it. It's packaged goods, it's retailers, it's people who want to talk to the local consumer. What data does the sponsor need? What's the thing that gets them going? Is it income? Is it households? The homeowners? What are those things that they need that are going to be able to make their decisions? And then how is success going to be determined? Again, back to if there's one thing you take away from today's session, it is always be thinking about that renewal. What is the opportunity for the renewal, and how is that going to be measured? Is it because you're going to drive so many people into their store? You're going to be driving so many people to taste that new microbrew? What are the things that are going to make your sponsor have their eyes perk up? So once you're done with prospecting, you got to do pitch, right? The pitch is, what's evaluation? This always gets a lot of traction in our conversation. So we'll go through this briefly, but with a little bit of depth. What are all of your assets? So you need to think of everything that you put your name on, everything that you could put a sponsor's name on: websites, social media, emails, flyers, brochures, anything, posters, all of your marketing materials that get out there in the public, if that's a place for you to be able to put their name on it, that's one of your assets. Then you need to go through what the value of the assets, how much do you put into it? What are the number of eyeballs? What's the amount of or what's the amount of gross impressions on all of this? You need to be talking marketing terms to marketing people, because 9 times out of 10, they're the ones who are making the decisions on all of this. So if you have an idea of what the value of those assets are, you'll be able to assign a value to whatever percentage of that is going to be included for your sponsor. What resources do you put towards activation and relationship building for the long term? I have to tell you, we've worked with both the U.S. Army and Wells Fargo over the past few years. Wells Fargo pre their issues, right, in 2016, but they put a lot of money into the activation. How much did we put in as the property to be able to match that? So the fee that they pay to get on board is one piece of this. How much of that is going to get reinvested? How much are you putting into? How much of that are you putting into making sure that people know that they're involved? And what's the value of a comprehensive relationship? Is it worth $10,000? Is it worth $100,000? Only you can tell based on market forces, based on what you're currently charging other partners. Those are some interesting pieces to discuss. So when you're developing the pitch, conduct that asset inventory, what we just talked about. Go through, list everything you possibly can, put your name on, put their name on, and try to figure out, okay, that's our set list of deliverables. That's our set list of things that we can sell. There are physical attractions as part of that. There's naming and presenting rights. For those of you who are who do season-long sponsorships for, or could have the potential of doing season-long sponsorships for an arts organization, think about what that would be if it's 20 events, if it's 30 events, if it's 50 events. Multi-event sponsorships, maybe you get 2 or 3 and you package them together. All of these things are different ways for you to differentiate yourself from the competitors, but also provide that relationship back to the sponsor that they're gonna love you. I mentioned this before, know as much as you can about your partner. Creativity is the key in developing the pitch. Use the elements that stand out, the things that are different about you. Don't be afraid to put that sponsor's name on that particular program or that particular stage or that particular promotional opportunity, because it's going to be something different, and it's going to be something that your competitors aren't doing, and it's going to make your sponsor partner eyes go wide open. And is there a business angle between the brands? Can you create a tie between what campaign you're running and what they're launching? Is there some kind of terminology? Is there something in their branding that's going to work really, really well for them, but also be able to allow you to drive people home, drive the point home with your audience? Always be focused on the sponsor's business objectives. When you get yourself too involved in your own business objectives, that's where you get into problems. Offer category exclusivity. Sometimes it sounds a little counterintuitive, but if you can charge a little bit more to just one partner within a specific category, that's a win, because that's one less sponsor, or maybe 3 less sponsorships that you have to go out there and market. But if you can get kind of close to what all of those numbers are when they come together, you can do a better job for your sponsor. And that's really what it's about. And then float the idea of multi-year agreements, especially if you've been around for a while. Not going to work for a first-time event, but if you've had a hosted event for 10 or 15 or 20 years, or you're the performing arts center, you're not going anywhere. Think about a multi-year agreement. It kind of takes that renewal, that worry out, and allows you to build a lot of traction over a period of time. So when we're pitching, I always say, try to stay away from the gold, silver, bronze idea. We've all fallen into it. try to customize every proposal. It's okay to say, yeah, we have a $25,000 proposal and a 15 and a 10, but don't give them a fancy name. Just like make it specific, because again, if you're talking to the local healthcare provider, maybe a regional hospital network, it's not the same thing as talking to a car dealer. It's just not. So why would you be pitching the same way? You want to be categorized so that, and customized so that the things that are important and imperative to them come through in that proposal. You want to always, again, remain consistent with the business objectives, and that could be based on the time of the year. It could be based on the local business environment. So, how much to charge? This is always a great question. Excuse me. Pardon for the cough. Option one is take your expense per feature, right? You've got, if you're selling a specific package, right, you're going to have some performers. If you're a festival, you're going to have a stage, maybe a midway, maybe a kids area. You've got overhead and marketing, whether you're performing arts center, whether you're an art gallery, whatever, you're always going to have those pieces. So take those expense per features and break it out, and then add 20% to those costs. So if a particular concert is going to cost you $5,000, you want to be charging $6,000 for the sponsorship. It's not going to be the full cost of the performer. Obviously, there's some things, and if you're only going to have a 200 audience members on staff or in the house, you're not going to have you're not going to be able to charge a huge amount for that. Where it is kind of different if you have 2,000 people in the audience, or if you're doing a huge festival and you're going to have 20,000 people. Think about all of those things in relation. The other way to do this is option two, and that's take your attendance statistics, and you want to factor that in, and then you want to work with gross impressions on your print advertisement, print materials, banners and signage. Here's a little rule of thumb, and this again comes from IEG. We didn't kind of make these up, but you want to take your percentage of cost. You want to take a cent per head. You want to take digital, which is half a cent, social media, which is half a cent, and do that multiplication out, and then you want to divide it by 2, and then you're kind of in the real zone of what you should be charging. Now, if you're talking about entitlement rights, this is a difference, and I've seen it come up. Entitlement rights is where you give the brand the name, right? So it's the XYZ Summer Festival. Presenting rights is always secondary. So the Summer Festival soundstage presented by XYZ. So you see what you get. Like, something is going to be branded as it is what it is, and that brand is first and foremost, and that gets the biggest check of all. The other one, it's more in a supportive role, and you still have that top end that you can sell. So what else? What's the possibilities of access to your partners? What are some of the sponsor communication assets that they can use to help promote you? How do you get into their business so there's something that's new and different, and a point of differentiation for them versus their competitors? How can you include your festival or event or concert in their messaging in traditional, social, or customer challenge? Is there a dollar value for all of this that can get traded out, right? So now all of a sudden you've taken a pure cash relationship with a sponsor, and you've turned it into a little bit of a cash trade, and you're going to get farther along because, if that's a really heavy advertiser, if that's an advertiser or a marketer that has a really great social media presence, and you're tagging yourself onto them, it's definitely a win for you. So the challenges are always the gatekeepers, right? There's somebody who picks up the phone and doesn't want to connect you to the decision maker. So that's just inbred into every potential sales opportunity you're ever going to take on. Brands and objectives are unaligned, right? You have a great idea about how you're going to connect your performing arts center to this particular sponsor, but there's no there there. There's no what you think is a perfect match isn't. The audience isn't aligned. The objectives aren't aligned. Don't worry about that. It's just sometimes a fact of life, and it's never forever. Give it some time, and it's a potential that you can come back to in a year or two. It's amazing how fast a year goes by, from the time you pitch to the time you get turned down to the next time you pitch. It's a lot shorter than you would think. Budget might not live, it might not exist. Hey, we had a $50,000 marketing budget for this particular project, and we don't have that anymore. We only have $10,000, and we've got to split that up over a couple of different arts organizations. Don't worry about it. I've been on that call. You just got to lump it up and take it on. And then there's past experiences, either with your organization or with sponsorship. They could have just had a bad experience. And then that's going to take a little bit of work. You're going to have to invite them out to your concert hall or your gallery and kind of schmooze them and warm them up. And usually what happens is you put a year or two into that, and the person leaves. And then you got to start all over again. But sometimes with that leaving, the institutional knowledge goes with them, and so do all those bad memories. So how do you leverage your event to drive traffic and sell more widgets and services? That's really the question you want to keep asking yourself. How can I use what I do? How can I use my arts connections to be able to further their business? It sounds counterintuitive, but the more you can think that you're an advocate for them as much as you are for yourself, as much as you advocate for their sponsorship to grow and be stronger, the better off everybody's going to be. So always be thinking renewal. That's clear, and it's been one of my I've been preaching that gospel for a while. And if you take that into every one of your conversations, you're going to be better off. So I think we're going to talk about closing, but at this point, I just open up if anybody has any questions on the call, covering anything too fast, too slow, following up. I'll give it a minute or two in case you've fallen asleep. Okay, well then we'll continue on. So we'll continue on with closing. So in doing closings, we want to be talking about negotiation. One of the pieces of this is never show your best deal. If you're expecting to make $25,000 on this deal, don't start at 25,000. You have no place to go to kind of retrench. So always give yourself a little bit of new. Always be wary of cherry picking items. This kind of came up, and think about it. This goes back to the gold, silver, bronze thing, right? In my gold package, I give you this amount of promotional mentions. I give you this amount of advertisements. I give you these banners. I give you these social mentions. And the person comes back and goes, I don't really want social mentions. Take $5,000 off of my sponsorship package. Well, you can't do that. The package is what the package is. And it takes a little deftness. It takes a little dancing around to be able to get people to be comfortable with that. You've decided that this package is the absolute best thing for them. So with that being said, you've already done the due diligence. You've already thought this thing through. This is what's going to deliver the message home. And if you're constantly talking about, if it's a branding initiative, if it's an awareness initiative that they're getting involved with marketing, if it's trying to drive floor traffic, depending on whether it's retailer or B2B or B2C, as long as you know what their measurement of success is going to be, then you can always point back to, you are going to get these social mentions because this is going to get us to lead more people into your bank, or more people to your website, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, it's hard to do, but kind of stick that in your brain, that don't let people cherry pick items off of your list. Say, this is the package. This is what it is. Always be looking at a contract. Always be looking for, getting the announcements done, that there's a big splashy announcement. Try not to put all of your sponsors together all at once, but spread them out over time. If you have 6 sponsors, do 6 major announcements. That's a great way for them to feel special and important, and also build your familiarity and build your frequency out in the community. Now the real fun begins. It's activation time. So activation is some of that signage and presence. It could be couponing. It could be the local or the newest restaurant in town, wants to do something to drive business into their location. It could be sampling of the newest microbrew, or a new smoothie shop opened up. Whatever those cases may be, wherever you're getting that sponsorship from, they are looking for access to your audience, and you want to be able to provide that. Could be a product launch. As I said, it's time for it's time for the local heating and electrical company is promoting something, and they want to that's a new service that they're trying to get out into the community, and they know that you have a lot of homeowners that participate or that are donors or patrons to your organization. Like those are the keys that you want to be thinking about. How do I connect this beyond just an ad in a book? Data collection is a huge part, right? When I mentioned we work with the U.S. Army, their big piece was talking about recruiting high-end tech-savvy students. So they had tablets on board. People were coming in, they were filling out their information for an opportunity to win things, or even better yet, everybody got something. So if you filled out the information card on the iPad, you were automatically given, I think they gave away a customized dog tag or something like that. But if there's an opportunity for you to collect data, or for them to collect data from your constituency, from the people that are at your festival or event, that's a really, really important thing. And if you can connect it to them sharing that data, it actually alleviates you needing to have volunteers doing surveys on your behalf. So they almost work as a quasi volunteer staff for you. Pretty cool. And engagement, it's about driving conversations, and it's about being inextricably linked to the program. It's about the fact that the customer, their potential customer, your current customer or guest, is engaging with them, and they know that they had that contact and that communication at your site, at your location. It was you who convened that. It was you who made that constituent conversation happen, and don't ever let anybody forget it. Leveraging assets for exclusive access. There are things that you can provide, whether it's VIP packages, we didn't even talk about those, but there are things that if you could offer to potential sponsors for them to look good to their customers or their employees, that's a huge thing. And that means that could be content that is, everybody's looking for website content, right? We're all looking for something that's going to stick out in our social media frenzy. So if there's something that, again, the arts and festivals are all about creating content. We are content generation machines. It's all we do, is in our DNA to create memorable and engaging experiences. With that, if you can provide exclusive content to your sponsor, who's your partner, and they can use that, that goes a long, long way, I have to tell you. And then there's leveraging and creating on-site features, whether it's something that's engaging that a sponsor can bring to you, especially if you're a festival and you're looking for something that fills out that midway or fills out that space in that park where you just, if you just had a great 100 by 100 space or 50 by 50 space filled, that could be a wonderful thing. A lot of your sponsors, have those packages, especially at a national level, that they could roll in and help you with. Activation, creating value added benefit, not only for the sponsor, but also for the guest. I use this Mountain Dew bottle here because we were engaged with a relationship with Pepsi. They had provided us a lot of product, but they needed some buzz. Pardon the pun. They needed a little buzz about this Mountain Dew Baja Blast. So what we were able to do is, line up an opportunity to get 2,500 bottles distributed to their core their core constituency of, boys 18 to 21. We were able to connect that dot. Not only did the guests love it, and we're over the moon about it, but Pepsi was over the moon about it because they had a whole bunch of social shares and a lot of great positive buzz coming out of that. Leveraging sponsors' non-cash assets are a key too. Communication and distribution channels. What can they do? How can they share your message? Go back to Pepsi. Every one of their distributors is out on the street. They're in every convenience store. They're in every supermarket. They're in every bodega. What are the opportunities that you can use their distribution channels to share your message? That's not a cash thing as far as they're concerned. And most of these companies are they're a little tight. They spend a lot of money for the LeBron James, and they spend a lot of money for the Marvel Comics tie-ins. And, they spend a lot of money at that really high level. But when it gets down to the grassroots level, they don't have a lot of money at the local distributorship. But what they can do is they can give you this access, and it's a way for you to not only tie into the messaging and communications, but also in-kind services, whatever it may be, and the volunteering piece. You want to customize the guest experience. At the end of the day, right? Even with the sponsors in and out of what they're doing, you want to make sure your guests are taken care of. I've spent a lot of time of this 45 minutes or so that we talked today about, about the sponsor, putting the sponsor first, putting the renewal first. Here, we want to be talking about, we want to always be having the guest experience in mind. And how does the sponsor and the activation of the sponsor impact the guest for a special event? And as I always say, if you get into your car on your way home and you're talking to your husband or wife, what are you saying about whether you're going to go back or not, or whether you're going to tell your neighbors or your sister about this? What are the things that are going to make you memorable, so that you're going to post it on your Facebook page and that you're going to hype it up, and other people are going to feel jealous that they didn't go, and they're going to want to go in the future. The sponsorship continuum is really interesting if you're starting at ground zero. So I just, and that meaning a sponsor that has never had activation experience in the past, right? Or they've kind of put their name on a billboard, but they've never really done much. Start small with a pilot project, right? You want to teach them the way that you handle sponsorship and the way that sponsorship should be handled. So go in, open the door, and say, I know you've never done sponsorship before, but hey, I've got a pilot project. I've heard about it from this guy who did this webinar, and I have this idea, and it's only going to be $2,500 or $500 or $5,000, whatever the dollar value is that you put on it. But we think that we're a good connection with you. We've done some research. We know that your audience is like our audience, and we can both benefit on this. So let's just start this as a tiny project, right? $1,000. Build in that activation opportunity, put some measurable outcomes. If you put this $1,000 into this or $2,500 into this, I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to give you 100 prospects or 150 prospects for you to follow up on. And they're right in your demographic. They're right in what you're trying to do to build your business. And we think that that's going to connect. We think that's going to, it could be test drives for cars. It could be, something for the real estate agent, to get more prospects to call he or she for open houses, whatever that would be. Let's get those measurable outcomes baked into this. Let's personalize it a little bit. Let's make it all about this. And, we have this little feature. It's a little meet the artist prior to the concert or prior to the exhibition. So we'd like you to be the sponsor of that, and that's going to be a part of this. And then start working towards that renewal, right? So you've taken this little project and you've gotten a measurable outcome associated with this. You've given a little VIP treatment to this. There's a built-in activation opportunity that I've filled out this card, as one of our guests fills this out, and I'm going to turn this in, and it's going to turn into something for the sponsor. All of a sudden, you've built this little package, and now you can start to talk about, hey, we only took this very tiny thing as a pilot program, but now look at what we could do. Let's add a zero to that amount. You give us $500 last year. What if we did $5,000 and we did this over multiple events? What if you gave us $1,000 this year, but let's make it $10,000 next year, and we're going to give you a whole spread at the event. Those are the kind of things. Start small. Don't go in there guns a-blazing saying, I want the $10,000 in year one. Just try a pilot program, a pilot project. You'll be amazed that if it works, and it kind of proves it, it's kind of proof of theory that if it works, you're going to have people that are going to want to join you and continue on. So sponsorship, activation, commitment, they should be willing to invest between 25 and 100% of what your of what the value is that you've discerned. And then how have we moved the needle? Have we met business objectives? Have we collected data? Have we activated the data? Meaning how many people have come in, how many surveys were filled out, what's the relationship of that data and surveys? Those are the keys to how you can move the needle and then report on that, whether it's that pilot program or whether it's one of your biggest sponsorships. Just a couple minutes left here. So, I thought what we could do is go over some of the collaboration pieces. We do have collaboration by properties. And that's between two different properties kind of coming together under one sponsorship. You have impact with aggregated total audiences, meaning if there are two arts organizations, instead of competing, why don't you come together? You're leveraging your contacts and brands on behalf of the sponsor. You're creating new properties through the collaborations and coalitions. Collaboration by sponsors as well. On the other side, can you put a manufacturer and a retailer together, a consumer product group and a retailer to be able to assist you? There are different ways that you can leverage your brand to your partners' clients and also leverage the marketing channels of your partners. So in the end, it's about follow-up. This is one of my favorite photographs. It was with our Wells Fargo team. We had thousands of people at MetLife Stadium. And, when you get the guy who's in charge of writing the checks, making photographs like this, and doing a selfie that then got posted on all of their internal web and social media. That's about as good as it gets. So I'd like to finish up. Whoop, I stopped one screen too early. If we play from the current slide, here are some takeaways for the day. Over communicate with all of your points of contact. Make sure they know everything. Make sure you're transparent. Make sure that you don't stalk them. But it's really, really important for you to keep in communication with everyone. Your sponsors' investment in activation is vital. If they're not willing to put that 25 to 100% of their dollar value in what they're giving you for the sponsorship rights fee, it's probably not going to get off to a good start. 100% is rare, but if you're charging $10,000, they should be putting at least $2,500 in. They shouldn't just be mailing it in. Sponsorship is trade in kind and cash. Anything goes, as far as I'm concerned. Know what's being measured. What is going to be the measurement of success when it comes down to all of this? Be part of the planning. Make sure that your team is with their team. It's not just about getting the check. It's not just about one or two emails. It's about sitting down and saying, here's what our season looks like. Here's how you're going to be involved. Let's brainstorm some ideas. Let us get back to you with a formal outline and dates and project plans so that everybody's on the same page. Use your sponsorship as part of programming. That's a key piece to all of this. Maybe your artistic director might not feel so good about this, but quite frankly, he or she getting a bonus, because we made enough money in sponsorship and fees that's gonna go a long way, and it's gonna make them feel important too. That's another key piece to this. Understand how you can drive results. Put your mind in the or put yourself in the same place as the mind of your sponsor. What are the ways that you can drive the results of that business? Or whether it's product or service or B2B, B2C, always be thinking about that. Be a sponsor. If you've got some marketing budget, pick out something and see how you're treated. Go out and learn about new things, learn about new techniques. Again, making sure that the sponsorships align correctly and the audiences align correctly. Always be thinking about the renewal. I can't, it was the first slide, it's the middle slide, it's the end slide. If you're not thinking about the renewal, you're going to wish you did at some point when you sit down to either make that phone call. It's like the person you didn't talk to for a long time and you kept putting off and kept putting off. Always be thinking about that renewal. You want to have all the data at your fingertips. You want to have the great stories at your fingertips. You want to have the photos and the video at your fingertips. All really important things. And thank the sponsor in meaningful ways. There's a lot of ways you can do this, especially with media and technology. But really go out of your way to make them feel like they were a part of everything that you do. And that if you go back to what we started with, which why do sponsors sponsor? And because culture defines us, because arts and culture is really important, because it's the only place where communities can kind of come together. So I hope you enjoyed the time that we spent together. I do have a marketing mentorship program. We have 2 coming up. One starts next month. They are 20-week programs. One goes June through October 2018. The other one starts in November and goes through February of 2019. And what we do is we work one-on-one with everybody and have an opportunity to live your life day to day, week to week, and figure out where your pain points are, come up with different ideas, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's social media, whatever kind of training or support that you need, we're willing to step in and help you out, kind of having your own in-house consultant. So if you have an idea that could work for you, I'm happy to set up a time to talk with you and your boss about how that could work best and what, again, the measurable outcomes could be. So I'm just going to open it up one last time for any questions. If there aren't any, I think we'll end our session for today. And please do join us. We will be coming back again in June, June 21st. We will be doing a session based on multi-generational marketing. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Allison.